Most people think you need a lot of money to benefit from compounding. They imagine big portfolios, large salaries, or huge monthly contributions. But the truth is that compounding doesn't care how much money you start with. It only cares about time and consistency. Even very small amounts can grow into something meaningful when you give them enough room to multiply. That's the part most people misunderstand. They wait until they have more money before they invest, not realizing that the little they could have invested earlier was actually the most valuable money of all. Compounding is simple. Your money earns a return, that return gets added to your balance, and then the next return is earned on a slightly bigger balance. Over time, this process repeats over and over. The early returns don't look impressive, but as the balance grows, the same percentage creates larger dollar amounts. This is why long-term investors see their portfolios grow slowly at first and then quickly later on. The key isn't starting with a lot. The key is starting with something and staying consistent long enough for the growth to become noticeable. So what is the lowest amount you need for compounding to actually work? The simplest answer is any amount. Compounding works on $10 the same way it works on $10,000. The difference is only the size of the final result, not the process itself. But the real question people are asking is different. They want to know, how small can you start and still see real results? How small can your contributions be while still reaching a meaningful goal over time? That's where the practical part of compounding comes in. Most people underestimate how powerful small amounts are. They think investing $20 or $30 isn't even worth doing, but the long-term math says otherwise. The important part is not the size of the first amount, it's the habit. A small amount invested regularly grows into something meaningful because compounding multiplies whatever you give it. Even small seeds grow into full-grown trees with enough time. The same is true with money. You don't need to start big. You need to start early. Let's look at a simple example. If someone invests just $25 a week, something many people spend without thinking, at an average return of 8%, they would have over $167,000 after 30 years. That is the power of compounding from a small amount. The total invested would be around $39,000 over that time, but compounding adds the remaining $128,000 on its own. And that's from an amount that many people consider too small to matter. When you increase the time horizon or the contribution amount, the results multiply even further. The reason small amounts work is because compounding is driven by time, not just money. Time is the multiplier. Money is simply the ingredient. When you combine the two, even modest investments grow. The earlier you start, the less money you need to reach a strong financial outcome. This is why someone who begins at age 20 can become a millionaire with contributions that would be impossible for someone starting at age 40. Starting early gives compounding more cycles to work with. More cycles mean more growth. The lowest amount you truly need to benefit from compounding is the amount you can stay consistent with. Consistency is more important than size. Investing $10 every week for 15 years beats investing $500 once and then nothing. Investors who try to start big often burn out, lose motivation, or feel overwhelmed. Investors who start small build a habit. A habit creates momentum. Momentum creates results. Compounding rewards people who show up regularly, not people who show up once. This is why the first stage of compounding is almost invisible. You invest small amounts, you wait, and the growth looks slow. People get discouraged because they expect fast results from a process that is naturally slow in the beginning. They forget that compounding is backloaded. The big numbers only show up after years of small building blocks. The lowest amount you need to make compounding work in your favor is the amount you can continue contributing during this slow stage without pressure. Another important part is removing barriers. Many people don't invest because they assume they need a specific number to begin. They think investing only makes sense at $100 a month or more. But modern platforms allow people to invest as little as $1, $5, or $10. Fractional shares let you buy parts of large companies without needing the full share price. This means the entry point is now lower than it has ever been in history. The real barrier now isn't money. It's mindset. People feel embarrassed starting small, yet starting small is the smartest thing you can do. If you ask successful long-term investors how they began, most will say they started with small contributions. They didn't wait until they felt ready. They didn't wait until they had a certain amount saved. They simply started with what they had. The habit became more important than the amount. Over time, their income grew, and their contributions grew with it. But the foundation was built with small money. For example, someone who invests $100 a month at an 8% return will see their portfolio begin generating more than $200 a year in returns around the 13 to 15-year range. At that point, the money they invested is no longer the main driver. Compounding has taken over. But here's the interesting part. Someone investing only $30 a month hits this same milestone just later. The size of the contribution affects speed, but not the mechanics. That's why even small contributions eventually unlock meaningful compounding. The lowest amount you need is simply the amount you can commit to for many years. People often underestimate the value of regular, small investing because they compare themselves to others. They see people investing hundreds or thousands per month and feel like their small amount doesn't count. But compounding is personal. It works the same way regardless of income level. A small investor who is consistent will often outperform a high-income investor who is inconsistent. Wealth grows from habits, not from income alone. Another reason small amounts matter is because they teach discipline. When you invest a large amount at once, you feel pressure. You constantly watch the market. You check your balance too often. Small amounts teach you to invest without emotion. They teach you to build a routine. When you're investing $25 or $50 a week, you don't obsess over the results. You simply let the system run. That calm mindset becomes your biggest advantage later when the amounts grow. The lowest amount you need for compounding to work also depends on your goals. If your goal is general long-term wealth, then almost any amount gives you a foundation to grow. If your goal is to retire early, then the amount needs to be higher relative to your income. But the pattern is always the same. Small amounts create the habit, larger amounts create the acceleration. You rarely start with speed. You start with rhythm. Rhythm eventually creates speed. Many investors also forget that compounding isn't only about money. It's about behavior. When you consistently invest, even small amounts, you learn the skill of patience. You learn to ignore market noise. You learn to wait for long-term results. These behavioral habits make a much bigger difference than the size of your first contributions. Someone who starts small but becomes steady will outperform someone who invests large amounts one year and gives up the next. The lowest amount you need to make compounding work in your favor also depends on how early you begin. The earlier you start, the less money you need later. If you begin investing in your early 20s, even $20 or $30 a week can build real wealth over a few decades. But if you start in your 40s or 50s, you will need larger contributions because time is shorter. That doesn't mean you're too late. It simply means the earlier dollars are the most valuable because they multiply the longest. This is why the question, what is the lowest amount, is almost always answered with whatever you can start with today. Waiting for a larger amount wastes the most valuable ingredient, time. The small contributions you make in the beginning carry the bulk of the multiplying later. They become the strong roots of your financial tree. Even if you can only invest $15 or $20 a week, it still counts. What you're really building is a compounding foundation. In the end, the lowest amount you need for compounding to work is the smallest amount you can invest consistently without stopping. It could be $5, $10, $20, or $50. The amount doesn't matter as much as the habit. Once the habit exists, you can always increase the amount later. What matters most is that you begin early, stay consistent, and give compounding the time it needs to become powerful. Small money becomes big money when you let time do its job. Compounding isn't magic, it's math. And the math works for anyone willing to start, no matter how small the starting amount is.